Hi everyone. This will probably be our final video, and in it I'm going to spend time looking at the last of Straus's articles on post-tonal voice leading. So there will be some questions as before, and before we get to that I'll just run through the questions that were attached to the second video relating to Strauss 2003. So that was basically fine as usual, but there were one or two things that not everyone got correct. So question 4, the answer there was convergence point. So the answer to question 4, what term does Strauss apply to the fuzzy T3 connection that is most nearly transposition-like? In example 7, it's convergence point. Question 5, I asked for the terms that David Lewin and Ian Quinn preferred. Everybody got Lewin correct, but Ian Quinn. The answer there is the opposite of crisp transposition is fuzzy transposition. So fuzzy transposition is what you needed. Remember, it's very easy to remember. It's the only music theory term I know that's close to the name of a Muppet character. Yeah, that one. Okay, question 8. Again, not everyone got the Schoenberg phrase correct about the idea of minimal movement. And it's a very short phrase, but it's one of Schoenberg's memorable phrases, like emancipation of the dissonance that he liked to use. This one is law of the shortest way. Law of the shortest way. So that's what you needed for question 8. Okay, so those are the questions that I needed to review. Now, I'm slightly fighting against dying light here, but it'd be better to use what time is available on Tuesday to put this video together whilst it's at least quiet. Tomorrow it may not be as quiet if we have gardeners outside where I live. So let's move on and think about Strauss's 2005 article, and the title is Voice Leading in Set Class Space. Now, it's quite a long article, but there's also a lot of illustrative material in it. I think you already have a copy. Hopefully you also got your first submission report, and it was attached to that email. Now, what I'm going to cover are, say, pages 45 to 67. So I'll set up the article, and then I'll just say a little bit about what follows the material after where I stop. Altogether then, there are going to be 8 questions in this particular video. So 8 questions, and as usual, I'll just try and signal them as and when they arrive. So hopefully I'll be able to do this once there's enough light to be able to see, for you to see what's going on the screen if you want to. So let's start on page 45. Strauss begins this article by introducing some slightly different notation in order to model smoothness in the case of both crisp and fuzzy TN, and that's in his figure 1 on page 46. Along the way, he also retains the offset values that are measured in respect of interval class 1s for deviations. Now, Charles is keeping me honest here. He says that, yeah, you said interval class 2, and he's right. And that's usually just because the video is rolling and I don't want to stop it, can't pause it, and there isn't enough time to edit it. So sorry about that, but Charles is quite correct. So well done, Charles. So where there are deviations, we measure them in terms of semitones or interval class 1s and inside rounded parentheses. He says, Strauss, that maximal uniformity is movement in the same direction by all of the voices, which reinforces a sense of organum-like motion. So that's Michael Friedman's point, the organum-like motion. And in this case, maximal uniformity, in all cases in fact, would involve only a single semitonal discrepancy. So in other words, it would be almost ideal voice leading, but with a single semitonal divergence. So, moving on, page 48. A similar degree of adjustment is made in respect of crisp and fuzzy inversion, IN, wherein balance is also considered, at least briefly, with respect to pitch rather than pitch class space. The prospect of then imagining a transformational map for all of the trichords, so it's all 12 of the trichords, is reintroduced, and this leads to my question 1. So here is question 1. What word describes voice leading which connects set classes with relatively little semitonal offset? So what word describes voice leading which connects set classes with relatively little semitonal offset? It begins with a P and it's italicized when it comes up. 3 more questions. So this is question 2. Straus notes that set class space modeling must be multidimensional. How many dimensions are required to model hexachords? So how many dimensions are required to model hexachords? Question 3. Ultimately, set class space modeling requires 6 position finders, from row as the lowest level, ultimately to universe as the most global. What 2-word phrase describes this system? So which 2-word phrase describes this system of position finding? And question 4. How are the extremes of any set class, shall we say, family characterized? How are the extremes of any set class family characterized? They go from one type of quality at one extreme to another type of quality at the opposite extreme. So how does Straus categorize these? 2 words there I'm looking for. So moving to page 53, in figure 4, Straus traces the layout of the trichords, and this is on page 52, just 1 page earlier. And he notes that the extremes connect to only one other set class. So that's the extremes connect to only one other set class, while set class 026 is what he calls the most promiscuous or extravagant, since it connects with a total of 6 different set classes. Splitting and fusion are then admitted in order to connect dyads and trichords before progressing to a 3-dimensional framework for the tetrachords. And now this is going to be in figure 7 on page 56 for the tetrachords, I think. Question 5. Which tetrachordal set class is required to appear twice in order to complete figure 7? And this would be in IN-related form. So one set class has to appear twice in order to complete figure 7. So give you the name of the set class, either the Fort name or the Straus name. Now, in this tetrachordal map then, 4.1, 4.28 and 4.19 are isolated elements. I'm sorry, that should be 4.9 are isolated elements. Well, 4.22 is maximally connected to 8 different set classes. Moving on, figure 8 in effect, now this is page 58, represents a conjunction of figures 6 and 7 that brings trichords and tetrachords together. However, you can't just jam them together, you have to have some principles that allow this. So here is question 6. Are shortcuts allowed in this context? Are shortcuts allowed? Also, when should set classes split and when should they fuse? So in Straus's view, when should set classes split and when should they fuse? Figure 9 then proceeds to model the pentachords, while figure 10 conjoins this framework with that generated for the tetrachords. Now this is on pages 60 and 61. In this case, note that some of the nodes involve set classes, so that's the nodes, the sort of circles, involve set classes of different cardinalities. I'm not sure we've seen that before, but we do see it here. Okay. Moving forwards again, now this is to pages 62 and 63, and we're looking at figures 11 and 12, and they present the hexachordal universe. And he does this in two different ways. First of all, he does it according to set classes in his own notation, and secondly, in relation to fort names. Note that some of the nodes, the circles, are full with 5 members, while others may have only a single member. Either way, the extreme set classes are, in fort terms, 6-1, and at the opposite end, the whole tone hexachord 635. 2 more questions now, and this will bring us to the end of the question. So question 7. When we move to the next figure, how many slots are required within the nodes to model the combination of pentachords and hexachords? How many slots need to be there in the nodes to actually make a map for the pentachords and hexachords together? Last question, question 8. How does Strauss adapt Schoenberg's phrase, and this is the one that I mentioned in the questions that we just had to double check before we started on this article, so we've already encountered it in Strauss 2003. How does he adapt that phrase to describe what he calls the multiple cardinality master space? So he has his own version of that phrase. What is his own version of that phrase? So by page 67, Strauss is ready to think through a few of its provisional implications. And he notes that the apparent will of tones, the tendency of tones to obey his version of the law, may or may not be adhered to by composers. And if they choose to resist these tendencies, perhaps that's for what he calls expressive reasons. In any event, this global tendency, he believes, could be subjected to experimental testing in order to confirm its validity. Okay, now that's as far as I'm going to go. There's quite a chunk of the article left, but a certain amount of that is given over to footnotes. What I would advise doing is paying closest attention to the analytical illustrations he gives. What he'll do next is talk about the idea of progressive offsets and how composers, in their sort of choice of composition, have effectively navigated the maps that he's already put out for us. In other words, all of the figures we've seen to date. So I concentrate more on those than on the other theoretical references he makes. He makes some to Ian Quinn's theoretical work and also, I think, to David Huron's theoretical work. So you can note those, but best not to get too involved with them because there's a lot of detail and in the end it's quite a broad point that he's making. So concentrate more on the examples, and as before, you could perhaps show 1 or 2 case study illustrations to make it clear that you've actually understood everything that you need. All right, good. I think that's all that really has to be dealt with in this article. We've still got a little bit of light left. So second submission now is going to come in finals week. I'm thinking maybe not the Monday. What's the Monday? I think it's the 11th. Maybe on the Tuesday, and that would be 12 noon. Now, that will give us quite a bit of time then, almost, what shall we say, 10 days, nearly 2 weeks. If you turn around your answers to this particular video by Friday, then that will mean that you'll have all of the remaining time till that Tuesday to work on the submission, which I think is probably going to help. But I will say this, I can't offer an extension when we get to the second submission because the grading has to be uploaded and because there's likely to be even more friction and potential uncertainty about grading and when it has to be done by, because we're working under the conditions that we are. I'd rather not leave that to chance. So I need time to grade the papers to be able to get the grades together. So I hope that Tuesday on around about 12 noon, so that would be the 12th, will work. I may move it to the Wednesday, but please do not count on this. Please don't. Tuesday is where we need to aim for. This is why I'm saying the videos can come to an end now. And should come to an end now, so we've got enough time to do the rest of the spade work that needs to be done. All right, you've put up with a lot, and I hope you found it helpful. You say some nice things, which is very kind of you. So I think you've done good work and you can be pleased with the results. Just see this through now. Don't let go and you will be fine. I only just came across the notice from YouTube that you can, of course, put kind of cards up at the beginning of a video and at the end to signal that this is a video you're about to watch and it's going to end now. But I won't do that. Instead, I think what we should do is have a word from our sponsors who have made all of this possible. So here they are. Okay, very generous people, very generous. All right, I will hope to see you in person soon. Eventually we'll get our lives back, but best not to rush that, and that might not even be this fall, so we have to be prepared for that. Who knows what will come? Better to be safe though than sorry. Good luck then with the second submission, and we'll be in touch. I can answer brief questions if you have them. Just let me know and I'll try and react. Okay then, I'm going to stop this video now and then I'm going to save it and then I'm going to upload it. All right, all best. Take care.